Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. We're going to start out with some video game news. As always, you can subscribe and rate us 5 stars on iTunes. That would be very helpful. We're trying to get more listeners. We've been at this for 6 years, coming up on 7. It would be nice if we can get more listeners. As pathetic as that sounds to be begging for that out of the gate. But I'm tired and I'm driving home from work, and I would like for this to be a sustainable source of income, so that way I'm not, working strictly for... What? My window open? Or am I just hearing car noises a little bit? Okay, whatever. So let's talk about video games. We've been talking about video games a lot lately, and I think it's just because video game news kind of dominates the news cycles recently. There hasn't been too much new on the, front, on the movie front. We haven't heard, because, we're in a little bit of a lull. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Thor Love and Thunder trailer by the end of the week, considering we're getting our first look at some toys from Titan, which does the 12-inch figures that were the bane of my existence when I worked at my previous job, because no one ever fucking bought them, and they got sat on the shelves for months on end. And then we'd put them on clearance. People would freak out in corporate. It's like, why is no one buying them? And it's like, because people only buy them when they are relative to the movies we have now. So leaving them here on the shelf, because the UPC, it's all under the, the item number broadly, and you get an assorted, whatever. So you end up stuck with shit no one wants, generic Spider-Man figures and, shit like that. And then, when the new shit comes out, people are like, hey, where's the new shit? And it's like, well, we're not going to get it until the old shit goes out, because the old shit's there. And it's like, well, I'm not going to pay $10 for it. Okay, whatever. So, all that said, we are, headed towards, rapidly headed towards a trailer for Love and Thunder, because those toys were officially revealed today, as were Lego sets. So I think we're going to be getting closer and closer to a Love and Thunder trailer. I would say probably by the end of the week. I'm probably wrong on that. Keep in mind I have no contacts inside or around Marvel Studios. Marvel Studios is not very nice to me in the way that DC is. DC gives me free shit all the time. I saw most of Peacemaker very early on, because they were like, here's the first 7 episodes, have fun. And I was like, alright, cool. And then, I saw Naomi early, and they're very nice to me over at DC. Marvel, not so much. So, let's talk about, how did we get on that topic, where it's, because it's we have that coming later this week, but assuming, my estimations are correct, which is probably untrue. But I want to talk about Kingdom Hearts on the Nintendo Switch, which I think is part of a broader problem that needs to be addressed. And I think that this idea of streaming games is an interesting one. And I think right now we're in the beginnings of this bold idea. But at the same time, there is a question of ownership. And I've mentioned the idea of ownership when it comes to what happens when you buy a game in the past. This isn't my first time talking about it. Where it's like, if I buy a video game, if I go to Walmart and buy a video game, I physically own a copy of that game. I can play that game for as long as I own the disc, my console and the disc both work. Once the disc breaks, I can get... I can buy a new copy of the game. It's the same kind of general ownership concept that goes into anything else you buy at a store. Like, if you buy a mug, you're not entitled to a new mug if the first one breaks, so you get, you buy a new one. So, the idea that I gotta pay $80, which is a lot of money, but in fairness, you are also getting a lot of game for that, a lot of money. You're getting Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, 3, I believe. You're getting, playable versions of Chain of Memories 2.8, Dream Drop Distance, Birth by Sleep, if I said that, and then also the way they did the cutscenes of 358 coded and Unchained X or Unchained Chi or whatever that bullshit is. So you're basically getting the entire story leading into, like, up until this point, with the exception of the newest game, Melody of Memory, or Memory of Melody, or whatever the fuck that new one is. So you basically have the entire Kingdom Hearts thing at your disposal. For $89, I don't think that's terrible, but if you go to PlayStation and you go to Walmart, you can pick up a copy of, each of those sets for, $20. So you'd be paying $60 in total for all three. So, not to be about the same. Never mind. The price isn't that bad. So you're paying $20 for Kingdom Hearts 3 alone, then $20 for 1.5. 1.5 and 2.5 is one set. So you're paying $60. So yeah, the price is a little bit extreme. You also don't own the game. It is referred to as cloud gaming, where the game itself is stored on the cloud, and you, the player, have to be connected to the internet at all times to access the game that you have bought. It's not the first game to do this. If I remember correctly, the Guardians of the Galaxy game is similar in that the Guardians of the Galaxy game also requires an always online thing. And this is not DRM. The game is too large for the Switch to have installed, because the Switch is not designed for this, it looks like. Like, the Switch does not have the capabilities to have this entire game installed on it and running at all times. It's kind of a flaw in the design of the Switch, where it's like, look, it is because of what the Wii U was and what the 3DS was, and how those systems operated. This kind of operates as the next step up for both. It is a step and a half above the 3DS. Like, it is a tremendous leap and bound over the 3DS. And it's a sizable graphical, increase and processing increase over the Wii U. But the problem is, it's not a full console. It's kind of still a handheld. Maybe I'll get flack for that, and maybe I'm misrepresenting what the Switch can do. But I don't think the Switch is a particularly well-designed console from a technical standpoint, to the point where it's like, if we can't play, Kingdom Hearts 1, for all intents and purposes, Kingdom Hearts 3 came out on the 3DS, which was, the previous iteration of this console. It was announced at E3 as, this is our big thing we have going for it. Chain of Memories, Chain of Memories, which is the edition they use, it's not a port of the Game Boy Advance version. It is a port of the version that was released for the PlayStation 2 as part of Final Mix of Kingdom Hearts 2. That was released there. If they want to say that they have to downscale the graphics for Kingdom Hearts 3, I can understand that, because Kingdom Hearts 3 did come out on the PS4 and the Xbox One. I don't understand why. I feel like had they just, sold it in parts, that would have been better received. And it also plays into this idea that, I'm paying $80 for this. I should be able to reasonably expect to be able to access this without having to be online constantly. And the connection threshold that they have to be able to play the game is a little high. It's a little high, the connection threshold, so it's causing problems on people with moderate connection speeds, where it's dropping out. Then couple that with, say, people who are using the internet and they don't have the fastest gig speed, they don't have gig speed internet, they don't have the fastest connection, they don't have, or they're sharing their connection with multiple people. You have a family of people who are all using the internet at once. It's going to slow down and dilute what they can do, and therein lies the fundamental issue that arises with this idea. Is that the infrastructure, besides the ownership issue, I think for me the ownership issue is the bigger deal. The fact that you can't say you own the game, and it's not like a subscription type service like a Netflix or something like that, where you're paying to stream it, and it's kind of understood if you're using a streaming service that you do not own what you are streaming. It is kind of like paying a rental fee. The way I view Netflix is you're paying a monthly fee to go to Blockbuster whenever you want. But at the same time, Blockbuster is also making their own original content, and you can just access it in your home. And I think that it's like with something like Game Pass, like paying a monthly fee for Game Pass, it's understood that you do not own your game. You do not. If I have Game Pass and the game gets taken off of Game Pass, I don't own it, nor do I have an expectation that I do own it. Like, there is no moment where I'm like, oh, I should be able to play this forever because I had Game Pass at one point. And therein lies kind of like this weird thing where it's like I'm paying specifically for this game, and then what ends up happening when the Wii U eShop goes, or the Nintendo Switch eShop closes? That $80 is just gone, because what's going to end up happening is if they're going to close down the servers, then you won't be able to access this game ever again. It's not a matter of I won't be able to access this game after this point. I'll just download it and have it on my console. In the way that if you have a Wii U or a 3DS, you can do that. You can go in and you can save things to your console and you can just have them in perpetuity. I don't think that it's something where, like, I don't think what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't think that you're going to be able to do that unless they're going to keep that running. Because as I understand it, when they shut down the servers for the shop, they shut down the servers for multiplayer too. Like, they're not going to keep multiplayer running, and they're definitely going to keep this running. Because how many people can keep playing this game? But it's this general idea of games as a service in a way that's designed to make you lose money as you want to play a game in perpetuity. Where, as long as my PS4 keeps working, any game I have for my PS4, I can play from now until the disc breaks. I don't have to worry about a license. I don't have to worry about losing, anything like that. It is on the thing, and it's like, yeah, there's going to be issues in the future where it's like, there will be games that don't have, that, with day one patches you won't be able to play, which is a little bit of an issue, I'll concede that. But as long as, you have a physical disc, you should be able to play the game. And I don't like this idea where it's like, look, you gotta pay again to play this thing that you already have. That seems a little ridiculous to me. And the thing is, too, especially if you're paying $80, which is over the regular retail price of a new game. It's not like you're paying, like, if you were paying $60, I'd still think that's excessive, but I'd be more receptive to it. You get what I'm saying? Like, I would be more understanding with, like, well, you're paying the same amount as any other game, and it's like, if you were to go and buy, like, the Kingdom Hearts collection for any other console, I think it is at $60, except for the Switch where it's $80. And you don't own your game then. Like, there's a fundamental issue of ownership that needs to be addressed in the gaming industry. Because the issue is, I hate being the person at the slippery slope argument. I hate being the person who's standing up at the top of the slippery slope, looking down at the bottom and being like, that's where we're going to be if we let this go. Where it's like, it's the kind of thing where it's like, it's easy to dismiss the entire thing, but there will be a day where, we don't have these key pieces of, gaming history. And I know saying gaming history sounds reductive, but we call cinematic history. We refer to, like, the history of cinema as something, the history of literature, the history of art. These are things that are all preserved and all of that. There needs to be, like, a museum or something that's dedicated to preserving games and preserving the data, and have it where it's not for profit. In the same way that, like, there's a library of screenplays that's designed to just do that. There are libraries of film that are just designed to preserve movies and preserve old cinema. So that way these parts of, what caused the evolution and what caused people to get somewhere are there. And I think part of it is that game companies don't want people to look back too far, because they don't want people to be like, oh, wait, that's what this was? We used to have this available as a, like, if I bought a game, this is what I got. Like, it's not, I bought a game, so now I have, this. Now, do I think that, like, it is entirely nefarious in that regard, where it's like they're trying to cover up what things were and how the evolution happened to kind of an apex in terms of amount of, quality and quantity for the money you were spending, and down to, where it is, now and where it is going. I don't think that's particularly it. I think it's more of they want to be able to resell you the game over and over again. And when they resell it and they make tweaks, it'll mask aspects of it that they don't want to do. In the same way that, like, we don't sit here and when we re-release movies, unless you're watching it on a station that censors, like if you're watching AMC and you watch Holiday Inn, it's going to be censored because they do Lincoln's birthday in the movie, and Bing Crosby, and I forgot who the lead is in that movie, the female lead is in that movie, but they're both in blackface for Lincoln's birthday, and that gets cut when they show it on AMC for obvious reasons. But if they show it on TCM, or if you watch it on a streamer, or if you watch it on DVD, that's not cut. They just let it go in there. And it's not that, they're trying to keep that out of people's, memory, but they don't want the backlash. In the same way that, like, if you go into, if you go back and watch The Office in season, in season 9, in the Christmas special, if you go on Peacock and watch it, they cut, Dwight's friend from the warehouse, they cut him as Black Pete, where he's in full blackface as Black Pete, and that is cut from the episode. There's a joke later in the episode where he still has the remnants of the blackface on at the party, like he cleaned up, but he still left some like behind his ear or something. But the first part of the joke where it's like, Dwight's in the kitchen and he's like, go ahead, get right up my ass, motherfucker. This guy behind me is right up my ass. So, it's like that first part of the joke is completely omitted. And, where it's like, he's like, oh, and we have, this guy. And they're like, no, don't bring him in. And Dwight's like, no, of course I would never do that. And then he quickly, on the slide, texts him. And he's outside in, the full Black Pete regalia. And he's like, and he goes back to his car to change. And that's cut. In the same way, if you watch 30 Rock, one of the live episodes, they talk about TV history, and they talk about how they couldn't have two black people in a TV show at one time at this point. So it's Tracy, Tracy Jordan and John Hamm, and John Hamm's in full blackface. And it's like, these are things that are cut out of these things. I'm not saying that there's anything as egregious as that being cut out in video games, but, to say that we're to cut things and modify what's in the game is not going to, is not going to make it easier for people to understand what happened in the past. In the same way that we allow cinema, and we keep cinema entirely intact for the most part, we can track the trajectory, we can track how pop culture changed, we can track how, audience tastes have changed throughout that. We're going to lose that in video games, too. Where it's like, we're going to be going off of secondhand accounts after a certain point. Where it's like, as these games that are online only start to disappear, you won't be able to play them anymore. Like Deformers, which is the one I always bring up, because it's a game that I paid for. I paid $40 for it, and eventually threw it away, because I didn't want to sell it to someone and have someone else get saddled with it. But Deformers was an online-only game. They shut down the servers, and it's as if the game never existed, because they don't sell it anymore. You can't go to GameStop and buy it because the servers are offline, so you can't play the game. Like, eventually, when Fall Guys closes their servers down, the game won't have, there won't be any first-hand way to play the game, because there is no offline mode. It is entirely online. And I'm not saying every game needs to have an offline mode, but there needs to be some way to preserve these games for historical purposes and for the, research purposes. Where it's like, look, we want to, like let's say someone wants to, when someone's getting ready to direct a movie, they will, a director will sit down and watch movies that, has something to do with it, or similar in look and feel to what they're trying to get in the movie that they're making. Ideally, you would think that video game developers would do the same thing with old video games, where it's like, look, I want to make a game, and I want to play games that are similar, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to, play this, I'm going to feel it out, and how it works, and all of that. That's going to be lost. And that's a fundamental issue with the way the games industry has been going. And I think that needs to be addressed further. So with that, we're done for today. I'm tired. Got 20 minutes in about, about video games and all of that. Hopefully the Thor trailer comes this week. And either way, I've started a deep dive on Star Trek. I watched half of Star Trek the Motion Picture last night. And that was an experience. I'm going to watch the second half tonight probably, because there's not too much more to watch. So I'm definitely going to do a review of that. I think you might want to get back into the review part of, the 30-minute reviews. What the fuck is this guy doing? I'm always waiting for someone. I want to get more into the review part of 30-minute reviews. So I'm going to do Star Trek. I'm going to do the 13 Star Trek movies. Is the first little project here. Where it's, the first 6 are all OG cast with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and all that. Then 7 through 10 is Patrick Stewart and the crew of The Next Generation. Then the Kelvin timeline of Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond. And then eventually I'm going to go into the TV shows too. See, because I got Paramount Plus for free through T-Mobile, because T-Mobile has that as a perk. So I got to watch. I get Paramount Plus for free. So I'm watching. I'm watching Star Trek now. Figure might as well. And yeah, so I'm going to dive deep on that and see how and see what holds up, what doesn't. So until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.